Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the recap, and what a weekend it was. My name is Stephen Kernick, and joining me in the box is Janneman Pruis. Janneman, right off the back of the Karl Festival of Motoring on Friday, we were racing in Ukraine, and we got to then go on the weekend and meet some of the drivers that we go and talk about on a daily basis, and even get chirped by them after we've chirped them out. But a beautiful photo of part of the guys that race in Raceface on the Sprint Series and the Grid Championship. You got to have a bit of fun in the sim rigs at the Black Ribbon Simulations booth, along with the MSA the sim racing, which is good to see. And also our pit boss got behind a direct drive for the very first time. But these drivers all got to see each other, which doesn't quite happen too often. I mean, this is madness.
Yep. Good evening, Stephen. Yes, good to be back, and must say it's good to not be the only two ugly faces on screen. What do you say? I mean, it was good to meet all the drivers, and I think some of these drivers also meeting each other for the very first time. And I mean, they've raced against each other numerous times in the past, but have never met.
It's the same as they actually raced with each other as teammates, we found out, but never got to meet up with one another until now.
He didn't know he didn't know who his teammate was.
Yeah, that's
only when they introduced.
Well, that's the thing. It was absolutely incredible. So a big thank you to Black Ribbon Simulations for housing the competition for Raceface, where you could win 500 Rand for the fastest lap time in a Porsche 911 around Karl, but also a big thank you to all our volunteers that went and helped out. I know Ronaldo Boersma was there doing some frantic work on Sunday and wearing himself out. So a big thank you to all our volunteers that were there representing sim racing at the Karl Festival of Motoring, with over 35,000 people walking through that door. That stand was rather busy. But let's carry on to what you're here for, the Raceface recap, and let's move on to our Grid Championship, our Pro Class. So, taking a look at the Pro Class, third place going to Q Duplessis, who went and had a phenomenal run out there. Definitely a bit of a challenging time for him. He had to try and figure out what's going to work. How is he going to claw his way to the top? A little bit of a lonely race, but was ultimately able to get the drive out. So, I mean, great to see the name, but at the same time, a bit of a lonely race in third place. Not too much happening in front and behind, and just having to focus on those lap times.
Absolutely, Stephen. Watkins Glen wasn't the easiest of races for a couple of drivers. Not just keeping your nose clean, but also, technical difficulties. We had one or two disconnects. We had drivers serving penalties. The race actually had everything. But Kewen keeping his nose clean, keeping free of penalties, and bringing it home in third place.
Now, second place going to Ryan Ottens, who was able to go and close down the distance. Ryan said that this was a difficult track. He tried everything he could to go for that first place, but ultimately second place, bagging some championship points. Can't be too mad about that. Kept his nose clean and out of some of the lap one carnage, but tried his best to go after this man. First place, Tariq Adam, who's running away with the championship right now and showing stellar pace, and why he is currently leading the Grid Championship. Will anyone be able to dethrone him? Well, we're going to have to find out, but at the moment, I think he's got the Lamborghini pretty much sorted.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. This was a stellar performance by Tariq. Managed to race well, led from start to finish. Strategy worked well in his favor. I think the rest of the field will really have to step up their game if they're going to challenge him in the remainder part of this championship. Remember, we're approaching that halfway stage, Stephen. Almost halfway through the championship, and if we're going to remain this dominant through the first half of the championship, I think it's going to be very difficult to catch him come the second half.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have to keep up the pace if he wants to walk away with the crown at the end of the Grid Championship, brought to you by Metal State and powered by MTN here at Raceface. But we got to talk about coming up during the course of the week. We're heading out to the Nürburgring with one of the most dreaded turn ones that you can deal with. A circuit I absolutely love, but the final corner I keep turning left instead of going right because I want to go and carry on the fun at Nürburgring going onto the Nordschleife.
You just take the long way around. That's the only thing. You do the other 150 odd corners before you reach the final corner. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, Nordschleife, a truly epic circuit, but they are doing the shorter version this week. Round 4, Stephen, as I said to you, we're reaching that halfway mark. After this week, we are halfway through the season. So I think this is going to be an epic, close race. Can Tariq Adams bring it home in first place again? I don't want to make predictions, but I think it's going to be difficult to catch him.
It's going to be an interesting one heading over to the GP Stricker of the Nürburgring. So,
that one, yes.
Yes, there we go. But something a little bit different and new to the recap. Let's head over to our Raceface GT3 Sprint Series Pro-Am. Yes, you heard me right. We are finally getting to show some of the Pro-Ams and give them a little bit of love that they deserve. Third place going to D. Farrell, who was in the Mercedes AMG. Beautiful color scheme. This is the one that I wanted to see racing in the pros, but ultimately it was in the Pro-Am, and Farrell had a phenomenal drive in the Mercedes. Not too much of an easy run. He had to work a bit hard to try and coach the tires all the way through to maintain that third place, and really showing that the front engines aren't completely out of the season yet, especially with the Mercedes. But second place ultimately going to the one, the only, Philip van Zyl, which you've had a few runs with and even been teammates, part of the LTR team, in second place.
Absolutely, and you know, it's good to see Flip starting to show the form. You know, there was a stage where Flip was an extremely quick driver, and it's good to see him stepping up to the plate again, leading the pack almost. You know, I think, don't want to make predictions, but I think some of these drivers, Stephen, that we are seeing on this podium might be in the Pro Division next season. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. And before we move on to first place, I'd like to say a big thank you to G Melmid and Tebo Malorto for the Pro-Am replay that we're able to show this. Thank you very much, guys. Really do appreciate it. It's good to see the community going and wanting to show off their classes. So for everyone out there, feel free to send the replay, and let's start including the AMs and the Pro-Ams in the recap. Ultimately, first place going to Mr. Cilliers himself of the EG Hybrid Combo team, and I've got to say, phenomenal stuff to see the Ferrari putting down the power. The road to pro starting to come into effect here. The driving starting to get a little bit better, but ultimately taking first place does open points in the championship for our Pro-Am division of the GT3 Sprint Series, brought to you by Raceface in our, as I said, into the Pro-Ams.
Yeah, and I think, you know, these names we will see more and more, and I already said it, you know, next season we might see them in the Pro Division of the Sprint Series.
Well, talking about Cilliers, let's take a look over to our Pro Division of our Raceface GT3 Sprint Series, with third place taking his debut podium position in the Pro class goes to Ulrich Sickers, who not only had the crowd on his feet, but I don't think he actually believed he got into third place and had to wait to the results to see it, to believe it. So congratulations to Sickers taking that third place, and I mean, that's where he wanted to be throughout the whole bunch. So Ulrich Sickers taking third place. Second place, though, very interesting, goes to Sunjan Pillay. Now, Sunjan Pillay was constantly pushing the limits of what his teammates could do, and ultimately Mr. Consistency was able to keep that Ferrari going, securing that second place, securing some points for his championship, and trying to get a little bit closer to first place Ryan Ottens, our defending champion for our Raceface GT3 Sprint Series Pro Division.
Now, same as with the Grid Championship, where we're sitting with Tariq Adams absolutely dominating it. Ryan has been absolutely dominant in this Sprint Series so far, Stephen. I mean, I think he's won all the races thus far, and we're on to round 5 now this week. Can he make it 5 in a row? Is he onto that max super streak, so to call it?
Well, that's it. We've seen 2 drivers dominating the season. Let's see if they will be able to do it. And I mean, this is for the grid and for the sprint series, so let's see what's going to go and happen. But as you brought up, we're heading over to round 5, the Nürburgring on the 30th of August. We're going to have a bit of fun with the Raceface GT3 Sprint Series, not only for our Pro Division, but also our Pro-Am. Really looking forward to it, looking forward to the tails. Nürburgring being one of my favorite circuits to go and have a bit of fun on, especially in the wet. And once you make your way through the corners, you should be okay. Only corner I feel very worried about, other than turn 1, is the Schumacher S's, because you tend to get too comfortable and go and send yourself off into the dirt.
Well, you were talking about the Schumacher S's. It's one of the places on the track where you can actually gain or lose a lot of time. And then we also need to keep into consideration the final chicane. We've seen some great passing maneuvers and also some interesting antics around that final chicane before they head into the last corner.
Drive over the curb, make it a DTM. It's got suspension.
Just straight line it. Go for it.
It's got suspension. Don't worry about it. It's fine. If you break it, there's always another mechanic to go and put it back together. Well, also coming up this weekend is something we haven't got to talk a lot about, but I know everyone's looking forward to it. It is going to be our Raceface Endurance Series. And round 3 coming up, heading over on the 2nd of September to Silverstone. It's a 6-hour race where the guys are going to be battling it out for 6 hours. We're going to see the teams go and duke it out. Can they outlast each other? Will they be able to outlast each other? Well, only time will tell. An endurance race is either you're going to make it or break it. So the Raceface GT3 Endurance Series is really looking to step up their game. And at the moment, Genesis Esports is out in front. But as we know, Janneman, endurance race can take a lot out of you if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Endurance racing, one of my favorite things to do. Silverstone, we've raced on Silverstone previously this season, so not entirely an unfamiliar track, but it's an endurance series or endurance racing team. Personally, it's something that you need to pace yourself with. If you try and push that limit each and every lap, the chances are good that somewhere along the line things might just go wrong. And I know there are people out there that might disagree with me, but that's how I approach endurance racing. I love the long runs, same as you. We tend to. You've done an endurance race of 6 hours all by your lonesome self.
I think everyone's done something crazy before, and we've seen a couple of guys this season go and try and lone drive it, and respect to them. But it's also respect to the team swapping out drivers, because you've got to keep the consistency to ensure you get the top spot. Talking about consistency, talking about having a bit of fun, let's move on to something I thoroughly enjoy. Let's go and take the wheel arches off and put our drivers in the center of the car. It's time for our Raceface F4 series. Janneman, you were in this. You got to see all the action. Take us through Heat 1, 3rd place.
3rd place, we've got Byron Mitchell. Absolutely amazing drive from him. These F4s are around Laguna Seca. A lot of fun to drive. You can carry a lot of speed through some of the corners. And it's a car with not a lot of power. It hasn't got as much power as a GT3 car, so you need to keep the momentum and keep the flow of the track in order to be quick. 2nd place, Julian Familiaris. These guys were having an awesome battle out in front and keeping their noses clean and bringing it home on the podium.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get caught out all in the craziness, but ultimately there can only be one winner. And 1st place going to Troy Dolenchek with a stellar run in the Mercedes Petronas colors, and having a bit of a difficult time to get past a couple of the back markers. He nearly got caught out once, twice, 3 times more, and you got to see it in your rearview mirror. That Heat 1 especially in a 20-minute race in an F4, can get rather crazy when you start trying to work your way through the field.
Yes, it does. Especially Laguna Seca, there's a couple of places on the track where passing is not that easy. Unfortunately, I did not have the greatest of races last week, but get my head in it and saw some awesome battles out on track. But due to the nature of this sprint racing, a little bit different to the GT racing, you need to try and let the faster cars through as soon as possible. Not the easiest thing to do around Laguna Seca always.
Yeah. Now taking a look at our Heat 2. Because we got 2 heats, we get double the fun, double 20-minute runs. Heat 2, third place, Troy Dolenchek, after starting in last place at the back of the field, and I'm talking about 24 cars, if I remember correctly, charging his way up into third place, narrowly missing second place by 0.2 of a second. I mean, that was an absolute banger of a drive to go from the back to third place and be right on the gearbox of second place. Ultimately, that went to Luke Lucchesi, who was able to keep the fight going, and right up to the wire, he had to really work on his consistency, really get up on the gearbox of first place, and wheel-to-wheel action. Now having to also look in his mirrors, improves his chances in the championship, but now starting to realize where the competition lies, and we're getting closer and closer to the end of our Raceface F4 Championship, brought to you by Ardendorf Machinery. First place of the Heat 2s though, going to Jason Coetzee, who duked it out with his RDSA teammate, had a great time out there, really had to focus on hitting those apexes every single time, but not an easy thing to do, especially here at Laguna Seca, and nearly getting caught out at the line to lose 2 spots did make things rather difficult, and I'm sure was going and wiping the sweat off his brow incredibly quickly. But ultimately, coming up, we're going to be heading to Alton Park on the 5th of September for round 3 of our Raceface F4 Season 1. And gotta say, really looking forward to it. Alton Park in the F4, huge amount of fun to slide around, huge amount of fun to keep it all together, but also can go and bin it rather quickly.
Yeah, especially at the hairpin. I mean, these cars have got no ABS, they've got no traction control. If you get your braking wrong into that hairpin, you're going to meet your friend the wall. And Stephen, we spoke about the fact that these cars are not the most powerful cars out there. Alton Park, another track where you absolutely need to get your flow right through the chicanes, down that back section, especially out of the last corner. The last corner, if you get the last corner wrong, you could lose a lot of drive onto that pit straight, and it can cost you dearly in terms of lap times and positions.
Or you catch a grass and you're going to see your... And moving on. Moving on to our Raceface F1 2023, the series risen from the ashes. And what a race it was. The F1s having to really push hard. Ultimately, third place Corsair, who managed to get back on the podium. Feels like a bit of a yo-yo action, just not quite getting the championship really wanted, but Corsair getting a third place, bagging a few points, and looking to climb the ladder little by little. But I got to say, these F1 2023s has got people looking very interested and wanting to do more racing like this. To go for a third place is not an easy feat to do, especially when you get caught in DRS trains, as we've seen before. Second place ultimately going to Titan, a new name heading on to the podium. Gotta say, I'm loving the new names popping up because it makes me wonder what's next, who's next, and who's going to grab the trophies, because everyone's starting to go and fill up their cabinets. And, well, the championship's still looking rather open for our Raceface F1 2023 championship. First place, though, going to Azure, going and having a bit of fun. Brandon Kruger going and really putting the power down, getting that first place and winning with a little bit of a dominating victory. He had to work a bit harder, but with a 1.5 second gap at the end of it, I'm sure that he could take a big sigh of relief through the final corner when he saw the checker flag ahead of him.
Absolutely, Stephen. Brilliant racing, but as you said, there's more and more interest in these F1 cars, and let's face it, it is the need for speed. This is the fastest you can essentially go around a racetrack, and it will and must get people more interested to do these F1 type of races.
I've got to say, I've been looking at it, and especially with the race coming up, 29th of August, heading out to Jeddah, street circuit. I've never been so good at street circuits at all, so I do want to have a crack at it and see if I can get a little bit close to these guys. But Jeddah, a circuit that I think none of us have actually been around, and it's going to be a bit of an equalizer for the grid. Lots of guys trying to get those fine-tuned setups. It's a very flowing, but you have to rely on a lot of high downforce and mechanical grip to get you going without compromising too much speed. Focusing on saving that DRS, or utilizing the DRS, saving as much energy as possible so you'll be able to attack and defend as much as possible. I don't think there's going to be anyone running away from the pack come Jeddah on the 29th of August.
Yeah, you said it. And the other thing you also need to watch out for is the barriers, or as we like to call them, the guide rails, because they guide you around a track like this. But this is a difficult circuit, Stephen. I think it's going to take a lot of practice to get this one right. I mean, it's one corner after the other. Not a lot of breathing room around there.
Yeah, and coming up, our Automobilista 2 on the 9th of September, heading out to Germany. They're going to have a bit of fun. And Automobilista 2 having to go and just miss out one round. They eventually coming back with a bit of a fight. Automobilista 2 really being a bit of an interesting one with the F1s. A couple of guys have been saying it's really interesting to drive. A couple of them have been playing around with rallycross cars and ultimately going back to the single-seaters because, you know, everyone loves a single-seater. You're going to go fast. It's open. It's fresh air. And you know what, Janneman? Being in an open cockpit, as you can say, and attest to, is a lot better than being behind a windscreen.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. You know, your sense of speed is a lot different in an open cockpit. You can drive a lot slower car in an open cockpit, but yet it feels a lot faster than a closed cockpit car. I mean, it's just the wind in your, especially if there's no windscreen at all, the wind in your face, you just got your helmet on, and you're just out there to have fun, centimeters from the tarmac. You can almost stick, in some of the cars, Steven, almost stick your hand out and touch the tarmac.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to be wanting to stick their hands out on the tarmac at Raceface Automobilista 2 at Germany. It might get a little bit messy. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, go and keep an eye out on our social media, out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And yes, we still got the birdie. We haven't changed from the birdie to the X. We haven't retired our little birdie. Whereas I like to call it the more like the hardy-dar. We need to actually make it a hardy-dar for Twitter. Come on, let's do that. Have a bit of fun. Also, go and keep an eye out on our Discord. Join in for all the conversation, all the racing action that's happening. And also, just get a feel with all the petrol heads. Got some fantastic people to have a chat to. A lot of people sharing interest. And do you know, there was actually one point they were talking about knitting in a sim racing. Can you believe it? The guys have really expanded. Knitting. No joke. I got to see it. I couldn't believe it too. Also, I'll send a screenshot. But ladies and gentlemen, so there's a whole bunch to take a look at, and I know our international contingent has also been coming over and taking a look at what the South Africans can do here at Raceface. If you want to join all the action, head over to www.raceface.pro to go and join up with all our championships. Every single one of them are still open for you to enter and have a bit of fun here at Raceface, and also at the Grid Championship, brought to you by Metal State and the Grid with their massive prize pool, all powered by MTN. Ultimately, from us, we'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week for the recap and get all the lowdown, all the action, and maybe a bit more of the chaos this time around. But from me, Stephen Kernick, and my co-host, Janneman Pruis, we'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.